Welcome to the Gone-Gpn Show with your hosts, Rick Payway and Tracy Clark. Grab your favorite beverage, kick back, put your feet up and have a listen. We're all Jeep all the time. On this edition of the Gone-Gpn Show, it's all about Moab. We're preparing to head to the 55th annual Easter Jeep Safari. We're going to tell you about some of our favorite trails, our favorite places to eat, and a lot of other cool things that happened during EJS. Stay tuned and enjoy.
Welcome to the 4th edition of the Gone-Gpn Show. I'm your host, Rick Payway.
And I'm your co-host, Tracy Clark. And this is our special Moab edition.
That's right. We've dedicated this edition to Moab because that's where we're going to be at the end of the month. This is going to be a special little thing. We have our complete staff here, almost our complete staff. We have Stuart, Greg, Chris, Liam, and Tyler here with us, and we all hope to be in Moab at the beginning of next month. What are the dates, Tracy, for the Easter Jeep Safari?
Easter Jeep Safari kicks off 30 days from today. Well, technically 28 because February's only got 28 days, but March 27th is the first Saturday of the 55th annual Easter Jeep Safari, and it runs through Easter Sunday, April 4th.
Right, so that's more than a week of wheeling. And I know for me, it's one of my favorite places to go. It's probably considered the Mecca of four-wheeling. It's one of the most well-known four-wheeling spots. And like you said, 55th anniversary. It's been around a long time. And I think we all know that it used to be that Moab was just a sleepy little farming town. Maybe some cattle, a little bit of this and that. Until 1952, when uranium was discovered by a miner called Charlie Steen. And it was pretty interesting because that was during the Cold War, and the Moab just burst its seams wide open. It grew so fast, it was like a regular mining boom town. Chris?
Yes, sir.
The name of the mine was the Mi Vida?
Mi Vida, yeah.
Yeah.
At Charlie's place. And he had been he was basically bankrupt. He was determined that he was going to find something out there of value, and uranium was what he was after. And he was at the end of all of his loans. He had no money, just about ready. He was ready to call it a day and just pack up and go find somewhere else to prospect. And he came across a good ore sample, and it made him a millionaire overnight. It's a pretty amazing story, yeah. And it brought the world to Moab, at least the American military.
That's right. And one of the interesting side notes is his 1946 CJ2A, which is what he was driving when he discovered it, and which made some of those trails around Moab, is still there today, even though Charlie himself is long gone.
Yeah, it's interesting about the trail system because, somebody that hasn't been there, or in fact, first time I was there, you think, who made all these trails? It's crazy because they're everywhere. They're up the shelves, the shelves between canyon. So for those of you that haven't been to Moab, you're either in a canyon or you're on top of a cliff. And somewhere the miners, military, the mineral mining industry decided that they could carve roads up these shelves and all across the top and down through the valleys, and they became the trails that we use.
Yeah, it's really cool. If you go on some of the trails like Metal Masher or 7 Mile Rim, while you're on the trail, if you look at the ground in front of you and you pay attention as you're doing the trail, every once in a while you can see these 4 or 6 inch core holes. And those holes are where they would core down through looking for uranium deposits. And some of them are really deep, way back in the day, some of the first times I ever went to Moab, when you would go on one of those trails, the trail guide, you'd stop and, you'd take your soda can and drop it down the core hole, and you could hear it, ting, 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 the hundreds of feet down. That's not acceptable today. We don't want to leave any litter, but those core holes are still there. So when you're on the trails, you can see those, and some of them are really, really cool. My favorite one is on 7 Mile Rim, and you can look down into it. You're very close to the edge of the cliff, and you can actually see about 100 feet down. There's, I don't know, a 20 or 30 foot cavern where the light comes in. So you can actually see into the core hole, even from the top, you can see the light. So it's really cool to find neat little things like that in Moab.
Right. You'll be going along following some trail. Usually you'll be following black marks on slick rock. And then you'll see where it's been just scraped away. And one of the reasons was they had bulldozers back then to make these roads. They had heavy equipment. They brought in drill rigs to make those core holes. And so these bulldozers would just plow a trail away. And once they were done, there was a few enterprising Jeepers that said, hey, let's connect a few of these roads that we've made so we can have a system. So that's how some of the longer ones came about today.
So has anybody ever found any interesting artifacts?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
We leave them all there because it's federal.
Yeah, there's a lot of really cool things that you can find around. In fact, on Hell's Revenge, which is a very famous trail, if you go on Hell's Revenge, right at the beginning of it, there's the Dinosaur Footprints. And about 50 feet before the Dinosaur Footprints, if you're savvy enough to kind of go off over the cliff edge, there's still some very, very large drill bits stuck in the side of the cliff. And you can wiggle them around, but you can't get them out. And then there's a lot of other spots where there's really cool little artifacts from back in the mining days. But that's a fun one for me.
Well, and even prior to mining days, there are quite a few cliff dwellings in the area, as well as petroglyphs.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Native Americans were a big group in that area because of the river. Colorado River flows right through Moab. So there was definitely, the regular agricultural stuff from prehistoric Indians all the way up to the modern times. It's still a big industry. But the four-wheeling part came about because I believe it was the Chamber of Commerce started hosting it to get people into the town, the very first Easter Jeep safaris. And then later on, the Red Rock four-wheelers formed, and they took over since it was much larger than what the Chamber could handle. And Chris, I know you have a little bit more information on that.
Actually, they had looked at the Jeepers Jamboree kind of as a model that had started a number of years before as a fundraiser for Georgetown, California on the Rubicon Trail. And they was like, hey, how do we get people here? How do we raise some funds for the community? How do we bring business in? And so they'd used Jeepers Jamboree as kind of a model. Early on, actually, I think it was actually the first event. It was in 1967. They ran behind the rocks, and they provided ice cream at lunch. And you think 1967, they didn't have fridge freezers, right?
Right.
So they had a Cessna 150, if I believe it was a 150, flew over the lunch spot when everybody was there, and they dropped bags of ice cream sandwiches. Yeah, that's how the story goes. That's how I understand it.
That's amazing. And from that time, I remember many years ago when they were still doing it, and they started the raffle where manufacturers and everybody donated, and all the club members and all the guests, they started buying tickets. So that grew really, really huge over the years. And I remember somewhere in the early 90s when manufacturers really started bringing on. And that's when they had to change the venue from the Chamber of Commerce offices all the way out to the new place just south of town.
Spanish Trail Arena.
Spanish Trail Arena, which has a huge indoor facility as well as outdoor. Unfortunately, last year, of course, Easter Jeep Safari was not held, so there was no vendor show and there was no giveaway. Whereas this year, Tracy, you have some more information on the giveaway, on the raffle?
They are still going to have the Big Friday giveaway, and it's going to be Facebook Live Initially, it was you had to be present to win, and they would call your number and you had to comment on Facebook. They've kind of changed that around. So now you're going to have to fill out your information on the back of your ticket that you get in your registration packet. Please make sure it's legible, because if they can't read your name or your contact information, it goes in file 13. And those that don't know file 13, it's the little round receptacle that hides under your desk. So if it's not legible and they cannot read it to contact you, then you don't have an opportunity to win anything. But still will be business as usual, just not in person. So for me, that's kind of a bonus, because it means not choking down dust for multiple hours while everybody's loading out and you're sitting there in the arena, and not sitting on those hard aluminum benches for hours and hours. So I kind of like the live aspect to this. But there will be no vendor show this year at Spanish Trail Arena for Red Rock four-wheelers. But Dixie Four-Wheel Drive, again, we've discussed this before, is having a vendor show, and we're going to turn this over to Greg, and he'll fill us in on that one.
Yeah, so I have a little bit of information on the vendor show that's going to happen at Dixie, mostly because Dixie actually hired me and Unofficial Use Only to help facilitate the vendor show. So I'm very fortunate to be a little shop here in Michigan, and I get to go all the way out there and help run the vendor show. So the vendor show that's going to be at Dixie, it is not the vendor show that we're used to at Spanish Trail Arena. Dixie kind of stepped up because they're in a different county. And when the Red Rock vendor show was originally canceled, so many people were distraught. Dixie decided they're a giant shop in Moab. They had a big piece of outdoor property that they would kind of step up and help fill that void. So the vendor show has 92 vendor booths and 9 semis inside a enclosed outdoor area, so it is fenced in, as well as they've picked up a couple properties next to it, which will house another couple features. So feature 1, feature 2, Bronco will be there with some Fords, and then all of the companies that we're used to at the vendor show will be there. Another really cool part is the town of Moab, from what we're hearing, has really stepped up, and there will be kind of like little tiny vendor areas all through town. So you'll have Walker Drug, but I heard yesterday even City Market, I think, is offering up some space. So Moab's really stepping up to help out with Easter Jeep Safari to show that the town supports it. So not only the vendor show that'll be out at Dixie, but you'll be able to go through town and see a bunch of other vendors. And I think that's really cool that the town is supporting this event so much, even in this uncertain times that we're in right now. But back to the vendor show at Dixie, it is outdoors, 100% outdoors. They will have to do the contract tracing. So if people want to go to the vendor show, wear your masks. There will be masks at the gate, which will be available for everybody if you don't have your own, because we want to make sure everybody's safe. To get in, you need a wristband. It is free entry, but you do need a wristband. And to get the wristband, you have to get your temperature checked and go through the normal stuff that we're getting used to in this new normal that we have. But it's all to make sure everybody stays safe.
You'll have to provide all your contact information.
Yep.
And all of that.
Yeah, normal contract tracing stuff. So you'll have to provide to get into the vendor show, because it is technically an event, even though it's outdoors, with the standard COVID contract tracing. People will have to give their name and an email and phone number, and then you get scanned with the thermometer, because if you have a temperature, you really shouldn't be out amongst other people. I mean, we can social distance as much as possible, but if you've got a temperature, I'm sorry, nobody wants to take the risk. Go out and have fun on the trails. Don't put yourself in harm's way with other people. but it should be a really good show. I think it's almost completely sold out, which means all the vendors. Yeah, all the vendors' spots are pretty much full. So, it'll be a great one during Easter Jeep Safari to still be able to have one, but it is 100% outside. So if you got bad weather, you gotta brave the weather, but it's the only way to get the event to happen during this pandemic that we're in.
Greg, but the weather's never bad in Moab.
No, the weather's never bad. In fact, I remember, 2010? I was at the vendor show, and I was working with AEV at the time, and I remember we were standing in the booth outside, and it was about 70 degrees at 11 o'clock in the morning, and at noon we got 4 inches of snow and hurricane force winds, and then by 3 p.m. it was 70 again. So
that's Moab.
Moab is beautiful, and it's my favorite place on earth. But it's a dry, arid climate. But the LaSalle Mountains are right behind you, so sometimes you do get the weather that comes off of there, and it is springtime. So be prepared.
So great.
Yeah.
Great. What days is the show, and what hours?
Oh man, now you're going to ask me questions.
I can actually answer that for you. The vendor show dates are the 30th and 31st of March. Show hours are 9 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Yep, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And it is just 2 days. And it's earlier in the week, so it's Tuesday, Wednesday, but it's it's still going to be a fun time.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned the vendor show, as we're talking about. Remember, you were in the 90s, Rick. Remember when it was up at the Chamber of Commerce office? I think it was 95, and maybe like 20 vendors. 20. And BF Goodrich showed up with their semi-trailer, and Ivan Stewart. And it was just like, whoa, Easter Jeep Safari has arrived.
Absolutely. It grew considerably during that time, late 90s, and of course from then on. It used to be basically just a bunch of people getting together and going four-wheeling with the club. And then it grew and grew and grew, and so did the club. And as always, clubs have issues, towns have issues, and then we saw quite a big influx of anti-access people moving to Moab because they wanted quite a bit of the place shut down. Whereas the Red Rock four-wheelers just have their mud fund, multiple use fund that helps keep things open. And they work really hard with the Bureau of Land Management to get permits and keep everything safe. So this year is no different. I think what you were saying, Greg, about the town of Moab actually coming together and saying, hey, we really want you guys. That hasn't happened a lot in the last few years. So it's really a nice thing to see.
It is. And, one thing I'd like to mention, and I'm not affiliated with any of those groups, but Tread Lightly or, the Red Rocks four-wheelers, even if you're going to Easter Jeep Safari and you're not registering with Red Rocks four-wheelers, seek out Red Rock or seek out Tread Lightly and make a donation, because those groups are really helping to keep these trails open. So even if you're not a member of one of them or you're not going for their particular event, still seek them out and help out, because we need to keep these trail systems open. Also, if you go out and you're on a trail and you see somebody else's garbage, take it with you. Don't leave it on the trail. Let's let the town know that we accept and that we're happy that they're doing it, and help clean up. Even if it's downtown, if you see something on the street, pick it up. Show the town that us as a Jeep organization and Jeep people want to make it better and leave it better. That's just something I always push. So I wanted to say it.
Yeah, and Grand County as well. They did amend the ordinance in order to allow this to happen. So, let's show Grand County that we appreciate the amendment and that, we're there to have fun, but at the same time, leave it better than we found it.
Yep.
Greg, that's a really good point. There's an incredible number of people that go to Easter Jeep Safari every year that actually don't register. I don't know what that percentage is, but it is nice. If they go by and they make a donation, to Red Rock just because of what they do for the sport.
Yep. Yeah. And I'm one of those people. I mean, I've been to Moab nearly 40 times now. I've never registered for Easter Jeep Safari, not once, because I used to always work for a company and then I started to go for myself. But I always made a point to go into the vendor show and buy some raffle tickets and do some other things to help with Red Rock four-wheelers. And I always try and find Tread Lightly and some of the other organizations that help keep our trails open. And, give them $20 or $50 or whatever you can spare at the time, because they're the reason that these trails stay open. Not just because Jeepers have goodwill and try and help and clean things up, but because there's people literally fighting for our rights to continue to off-road.
And I think you'll find that a lot of people just know about Moab and they don't realize that the actual Easter Jeep Safari is put on by the Red Rock Four-Wheelers. It is a pay-to-wheel organization, excuse me, and they have multiple trails every day to different areas. Not every trail every day, but they have plenty for everybody to do. So, of course, you have to sign up in advance and pay your money per trail for that. And they're usually limited to about 20, 25 vehicles, I think. Just depends on Moab.
Yeah, most trails now are limited to 35 vehicles per registered trail. Some of the more popular ones like Fins and things, they will do a staggered departure so they can actually get more rigs on the trail. Back in the day when I first started going out there and leading trails and gunning trails for Red Rock four-wheelers, anybody could sign up. I mean, I remember one time on Steelbender, we had 62 vehicles. That makes for a really, really long day on the trail.
That's too long a day.
That's too long a day. So now they've limited it to 35 vehicles. On most trails, there may be a few that are a little bit less. You can find the magazine online and you can look through and see what trails are being run when. They opened general registration this past week, and I think most of the trails have sold out. But
and one of the really good things about the growth of the club and what the club's been doing for Easter Jeep Safari, if you do go on and you register for a trail, you have to click all the boxes, right? You have to meet the requirements for the trail, which helps the trail move along. So, you don't have somebody in the middle of the pack on Moab Rim that's running a bone stock Jeep. The Jeep might be able to do the trail with the right spotter and the right person and the right driver and everything else. But when you're in a group of 35, that can delay that trail immensely. So Red Rock has really narrowed down the requirements for each individual trail. And it'll tell you, you need 35s and you need lockers and you need a winch and you need all these different things to be eligible for that trail, which really helps speed up the process when you have big groups like that. So, I mean, Red Rock has just continually improved every year. So definitely sign up, register, and you'll get on the right trail and you'll have a blast.
But, I was going to say, if the trails are all sold out that you guys really want to go out and do, still come to Moab, support the town. You can still buy your ticket for the Friday giveaway. You can still donate to the Mud Fund. You can still experience Easter Jeep Safari and still have some great wheeling.
Oh, 100%.
I want to jump in real quick. As the newest person, so I've been to Moab a total of 3 times, and one of them was for rock climbing, so not even Jeep related. But I was looking at the Jeeps while I was there going, ooh, someday. So the first time I went to Moab with my Jeep, which would have been this one, the 53rd, so the last Easter Jeep Safari that happened, I was really, really nervous to get out there. Being new to Jeeps, having a YJ that's not quite stock, but close, and really never being out west much at all. I was very nervous about it. And so that was one thing I liked about the Red Rock was I went on, I made an account, I got the magazine, went through the trails, and like Greg said, there's an online portal. You tell them my tires are this big, I have this many lockers, etc., and they won't let you sign up for the trails that you can't do. Which that to me was huge because here I am going, I don't know if I'm going to fall off a cliff or break my Jeep because I drove the Jeep out and I drove the Jeep home. So not breaking down was really important to me. And not falling off a cliff was also really important to me. And so that whole experience was really, really good for the first time. And I will say to anyone else who wants to go to Moab but is terrified of the idea of driving on rocks near a cliff edge, just do it. It is a ton of fun, and there are trails for beginners, and there's a lot of people that will take time to tell you, go here, not here. They'll spot you. The community is excellent, and you can meet a lot of really cool people and have a blast.
Yeah, and to add to that, even if you haven't signed up and you're still going to Moab to support the town and support the event, there are trail guides. There's Nina Barlow and Dan Mick and a bunch of others who, anytime you go throughout the year, you can get a trail guide who knows the trail, even if you're not familiar with Moab. So it really is a town catered to it. In fact, a little anecdote, which is fun. When you first roll into town, so at the north end of town, on the left side, you'll see this rock shop, which sells rocks because Moab is known for rocks. That rock shop was started by a gentleman named Lynn Ottinger. And Lynn Ottinger is one of the most famous people when it comes to rocks. If you're a rock hound, you've probably heard his name. So he lives in Moab full time. And he was, I think, the very first tour guide ever in Moab. And he used to do the trails that we do on our Jeeps with 21 window school buses, the 21 window VW buses.
VW, yeah.
Yep. I have pictures of him going across the Golden Crack. And for anybody who's been to Moab and driven the trail to get to the Golden Crack, just imagine a 21 window VW bus that's two-wheel drive making that trail.
It's loaded with tourists.
Yeah, loaded with tourists. And Lynn still lives in the town, and he's got a warehouse outside of town. He's got about 10 of those buses still in his little shop, and he's a great guy. But Moab's been tour guidey and off-roady for 50 years, over 50 years. It's a wonderful place to visit.
And that's the cool thing about it, is that there's lots of trails, lots of names of trails, famous ones. And for the most part, once you get your Jeep to a certain degree, like at least 33s and lockers, you can make most of the trails. I think everybody.
Oh yeah. Look at a couple years ago when the Willys guys were there with almost bone stock Willys, and they were doing trails like Moab Rim on 31-inch tires. It's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of trails, we all know the names of some of them: Metal Masher, etc. Moab Rim. What are your guys' favorite trail? Chris, start with you.
Oh man, that's a good question. All right, so it's not one of the famous hardcore rock crawling kind of trails. I actually partially like taking a few days and doing Lockhart Basin or the White Rim Trail and getting permits and camping out there. It's just like, it's remote. It's like beautiful backcountry Moab. I mean, you do need 4-wheel drive, but it's not like running Pritchett Canyon. And it's just like, we're talking about artifacts. There's all kinds of cool stuff out there. I was camped in Lockhart Basin around 1990. A buddy of mine and I were out there, and we had seen this switchback up a scree field to that white layer where they found, or the gray layer where they found the uranium deposits. And we're like, you know what? And it had a cat track up it, and the guy that drove that cat, the cat actually probably had 2 seats. One for him and one for his gonads. Because it was a heck of a trail getting up there. Anyway, we get up there. There's a hole punched in the side. That's what we went up to look at the mine. And there was actually a full case of dynamite sitting back in the back of this with the claim stake stuck on the side of the mine. It's no longer there. Sorry?
So that's a little dangerous.
It was. In fact, my buddy, I went and looked at it. I was like, holy moly. And it was starting to leach out in the bottom, the glycerate. And I walked back out it was about 50 feet deep, and I walked back out to the edge of the canyon, and I turn around, and my buddy's down there on his knee with his hand on this case, trying to pull it apart. And I was just like, I freaked out. I'm like, yeah, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I want to take a piece home.
Whoa.
I was just backing out around the corner. I'm like, stop. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I like that type of thing. I like the hardcore stuff, but the backcountry in Moab, and you don't see a lot of people out there either.
Right. How about you, Stu? What's your favorite? You've been going out there for good 20 some 30 years.
There, let me unmute there. Yeah, it's been quite a few years, and kind of to ricochet a little bit off of what Chris was talking about. I mean, I've done some really hardcore stuff, and that has its place. I mean, it's just the adrenaline rush you get from doing harebrained obstacles is incredible. But one of my favorite trails is just going out Potash Road, and I don't know how many of you guys have done that, but that's part of the view on my screen behind me, and it's actually really easy. I mean, it's honestly a graded road for quite a few miles, and then the rest is just nicely packed 2-track. But it's kind of interesting because you're sort of halfway in between this point right behind me. If you want to go out there for just a day trip, it's a great lunch stop, and it's about halfway in between Dead Horse State Park, which is a couple thousand feet below you, and then the Colorado River, which is probably another 1,000 feet below you. And just a fun half day and great little trail. It's absolutely one of my favorites.
That's a great one. And if you follow that up into the park and across the other side, it'll take you down to Mineral Bottom, which is the end point for the White Rim Trail, which will take you all the way back around to Potash Road.
Right.
Yep. And on Potash Road, you've got
winds its way up the cliff all the way to the top of the park.
Yep. And there's off of Potash Road, you've got some beautiful petroglyphs that you can find. There's even a couple spots with dinosaur tracks and dinosaur footprints. So, it's a beautiful spot.
You mentioned White Rim Trail, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's one of Tyler's favorite trails, isn't it?
Yeah, that's probably my favorite. It's more of a what I would call an overlanding trail than it's not got a lot of technical rock crawling. In fact, it's not really got any technical rock crawling on it, but it is definitely high clearance, 4-wheel drive. But I like to do it from the northwest and go counterclockwise. And if you time it just right, if you go in sort of late in the evening up on the northwest, go in and reserve one of those campsites up in the northwest section, stay the night there, you'll see just amazing light coming down those mesas and cliff faces as the sun sets. Then you get up in the morning and you start heading south. And if you time it right, just as you're coming up that Potash Road, up those switchbacks that Stuart was talking about, you'll catch the sunset again. And the sunset on that road is you've never seen anything like it, and you'll never forget it. The amazing thing about the White Rim Road is that it's just vista after vista after vista. I mean, every time you come around a turn, you're like, oh, it can't get better than this. And then you come around the next turn, you're like, okay, it can't get better than this. And then you come around the next turn, you end up out there and looking at the Needles District and whatever. I mean, it's amazing. But if you do that trail, you've got to give yourself time enough to take photographs and to take the little side shoot roads that go out and you can see the Needles Overlook and some things like that. I saw a herd of desert bighorns. Last time I did it, got some amazing footage of some desert bighorn that came across the road 70 yards ahead of me. It's just, what an amazing trail. But it's 100 miles. You can do it in a day, but that's a long day.
That's a long trail.
That's a long trail. Doing it in a day, I don't know that you could do it and get home before dark, and you'd be really tired. There's a lot of mountain bike traffic on it. There's motorcycles on it, so it's not a trail that you want to do in a hurry. But it also has very limited, there's only 20 campsites or 20 camp spaces, and I think 10 sites, and they are by reservation only. It's completely primitive. There's no services. And those are the only designated campsites. If you can't get one of those reserved, there's no camping off trail. So that's nice in that it limits the traffic to a certain degree, but just what an amazing trail. Just vista after vista after vista. It's beautiful. I enjoyed it so much more than even some of the technical trails that I've been on. You know, it's a different kind of fun, I guess.
Right. I think that's what we've all found, that obstacles and slick rock and gnarly, nearly killing yourself, falling off cliff edges and things like that and rolling over is all pretty cool. But so is the longer trips where you relax and see the beauty. There's plenty of that in Moab where you don't even need low range, although it sure is handy to have. Tracy, what's one of your favorite trails?
You mean I can only pick one?
No, you go two because I've got two. And you're the co-host, so
Yeah.
Right.
I'm going to mention a few. You've got the highly trafficked Fins and Things, and that's always one of my favorites for a quick shakedown because you can do the first section of it. Great place just to go out, hit the first section of it, and shake the cobwebs out of the Jeep after winter storage. But I also like Steelbender. And, it's got some gnarly stuff, but it's gorgeous and it's fun. I would have to say my absolute favorite, though, is not a normal EJS trail. Well, they don't run it during Easter Jeep Safari, period. And it's not a well-known trail, and it's called Tower Arch.
Mm.
And it's northeast of Moab, so you'll drive out 191. And you'll go past the Shell station and the teepees and Moab Under the Sky or whatever the tent camping place where you pay premium big bucks to go sleep in tents. But then you head off to the east. And you follow a fairly well-maintained road for a while. And then you see a little sign that says high clearance required. And you kind of turn off to the left. And you follow it back through a lot of sand and some gorgeous washes. And then there's one slick rock climb followed by this huge, long sand hill. And depending on the weather, it's either going to be fairly hard pack underneath the surface sand or you're going to get buried. And it's really cool. You'll get to the T intersection, you'll turn left and you'll go over some small ledges and you get out to Tower Arch and you get to hike down through there and you're out by the Marching Men and Klondike Bluffs and all of that. Coming out, you can either backtrack and go out the way that you came in, or you can follow it through some more technical stuff and then you end up on Salt. I believe it's Salt Valley Road, which is about 10 or 12 miles of most of the time solid washboard. It will jar your fillings loose, make you wish that there was enough cover there to stop for the facilities about every 100 yards. It's so badly washboarded.
And this is your favorite.
My favorite. This is my favorite.
So it must be worth it.
Yeah, because you end up, when you T-intersect with pavement finally, at Skyview Arch at the top of Arches National Park.
Right, and then exit through the park?
You can exit through the park, or you can go down to Balance Rock and hang a right and go back out the fairly improved dirt road.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That's one of my favorites. You can't beat the scenery out there. I mean, you can look back and see the LaSalles. You can, as you're coming in, you look back and you see Monitor and Merrimack, and it's not a highly trafficked trip. It's very enjoyable, a lot of fun.
Yeah, and there are so many people at Moab during the Easter Jeep Safari. Sometimes it's better to go off by yourself and find those cool roads rather than trying to fight the traffic. And speaking of which, if the Red Rock four-wheelers are running a trail on a certain day, that it is closed to everybody else. They have monitors front and rear so they can get their group in and out. And then, of course,
not every trail, though, Rick.
Most important trail. Especially all
most
the
important
ones and popular ones.
Right.
Yeah, some of them, there's no problem.
Right. And I guess the other out of the way trail, and it's kind of a long way to get there. It's easy, but it's beautiful. Would be Secret Spire.
Secret Spire, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Well, I've got a whole bunch of favorites, but I'm going to ask Liam.
Give us two. Come on.
I want to know what Liam's favorite so far is that he's been on.
Yeah, so I'm going to only pick from the trails that I've driven on. I rode a couple with Greg late last year, and those were pretty fun. But I want to pick ones that my YJ's been on. And so I've been on 3. I did Copper Ridge, I did Secret Spire, and I did Cameo Cliffs. And my favorite of those 3 was Cameo Cliffs, which was a new trail guided by Red Rock the year I went, so the last EJS. And I can't remember what it was rated. It was either a 3 or a 4. And let's say if it's a 3, it should have been a 4. Whereas Copper Ridge was a 4 and it should have been a 3. So we get out to Cameo Cliffs, and it is just, you're kind of going through all kinds of different landscape, some sand, there's some shrubbery, and then obviously there's cliffs about the middle of the trail, I'd say, where it puts you with a wall on one side and a drop off on the other. And you're a little off camber towards the drop off. There's plenty of room for your Jeep, but that doesn't matter in your mind because there's a drop off. It's not very technical in that area at all, but it's enough to get your blood pumping and, the adrenaline running. Yet it was being run by me with 31s. There were stock JLs, JKs out there. There's kind of a family trip with enough technical aspect to still stretch your Jeep. I did, because I took video of my wheels as I was going, and I definitely hit max flex at times going over certain rocks, and I scraped a little bit on approach and departure angles, but nothing that was going to break my Jeep. Just enough really to have a good time, feel like you did a technical trail. You got your blood pumping, but also you're going to get home safe. And the views were phenomenal. And it kept it going the whole time. It's not like obstacle road. It was just light obstacles the whole trip. And
cool. Yeah.
I was really impressed with it. I had a lot of fun.
And I haven't done that one myself, so that's something to look forward to.
Yeah, it comes recommended.
Highly recommended. That's awesome.
You talk about views. I mean, I'm like everybody. I'm like Greg. I've been there many times, and I always look forward to Eastern Jeep Safari or just going to Moab. Been there in a lot of off weeks. But I come in from Highway 50, Highway 70 side, and every time, without question, I just start dropping into that canyon, and you see these incredible red rock cliffs spiring up, towering up on both sides, and you cross the park and you're just like, I've arrived.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I mean,
red rock is special.
30 some odd years ago, I had driven back and forth through Moab on my way to Arizona, Colorado, back and forth dozens of times. And it looked interesting. But you don't see anything in Moab until you get off the pavement. Mm-hmm. And then it's a whole new world.
Yes, it really is incredible. Greg, what's your favorite?
Oh, boy. Well, I'm actually going to strike on a few, but I'm going to do very short clips of each, just a couple highlights. A trail that I'm not super, it's not like one of my top favorites, but Cane Creek. I love after you go over Hamburger Hill on Cane Creek when you're riding along the kind of cliff edge and you can see a couple of the old cars from the 50s and 60s that have fallen off of the cliff 30 and 40 years ago. So I like that on Cane Creek. There's a couple other fun trails. Metal Masher is one of my top trails. I love it. You can do it in a stock vehicle or you can do it in a highly modified vehicle because there's, it's got a little bit of everything. But I really love the point when you get to the overlook at the top. So the very top of Metal Masher, you have this beautiful overlook with about a 1,400 foot cliff. And if you time it right, just like Tyler kept saying about timing, if you hit that trail like right after lunch, you'll get to the top right as the sun is starting to set. And if you look across the highway, because you can see the highway, 1,400 feet below you. If you look across and south just a little bit, as the sun starts to set, you can see shadows of the arches from Arches National Park. So the arches will make these giant, beautiful shadows, and you can see the light beaming through them. So I really like that. You can also see that same. What's that, Tracy?
It's one of my favorite trails to watch the moonrise from that vantage point, because Easter Jeep Safari, there is always a full moon during EJS, and to watch the full moon come up behind those arches from the top of Metal Masher is unbelievable.
Yep. The top of 7 Mile Rim, you can kind of get the same views, but Metal Masher I like more. Hands down favorite trail is definitely Moab Rim. I do Moab Rim every time I go to Moab, usually at least once, sometimes more. And I love doing Moab Rim on a full moon night. So even if I don't have a lot of other people with me, if it's just me and a couple of vehicles, or even by myself, I'll do a Moab Rim by moonlight, which means tape up your tail lights, turn off your headlights, let your retinas adjust, because you can actually see, because the lack of the pollution, you can see miles with the naked eye under the moonlight. But Moab Rim, it's, the first 500 yards, there's definitely some technical things, and you're overlooking the river, the Colorado River. But my favorite part of Moab Rim, a lot of people never do it. They never get the full experience of Moab Rim. When you get to the top and you overlook Moab, don't stop. If you keep going, there's sand dunes. There's some really technical things that you can play on where you really twist up your Jeep. But if you keep going, and near the end of the trail, there's a bypass, and you can either go to the second overlook of Moab, or if you go to the right, you'll have to hike a couple hundred yards. But there's a rock outcropping that has hundreds and hundreds of Indian petroglyphs on it. And there's a little crevasse that if you're really willing, you can climb the crevasse. And on top of it is an Indian fort from, I think it's been carbon dated somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 years old. So there's these hand stacked rocks that indigenous people put there over 1,000 years ago, and that was their home. And it's just really cool to see stuff like that. I was actually in October, I brought Liam and a few other people, even Fred Williams, I brought Fred up there, and he had never seen that. He'd done that trail dozens of times, had never seen that. But I was a little disappointed that the rocks, the hand stacked rocks on top of the crevasse that you have to climb, have actually been desecrated. People have been adding rocks to it. So it used to be about a foot and a half tall, and now it's about 3.5 feet tall. And that really bums me out that people are, defacing such a huge, such a cool thing. But that's my all-time favorite trail in the world. I love Moab Rim. If I didn't have a Jeep, I would walk it. It's just such a beautiful spot. Metal Masher second, and then I have a few other top trails. Like I love doing fins and things at night with no headlights, and but yeah, Moab Rim's definitely my top. I love that trail.
So, Greg, speaking of hiking, there's an arch out there off of the Rim Trail too, right? And a little
so
oasis of water.
Well, there's actually on Moab Rim, when you're first going up, so the first 500 yards, which pucker some people up, I actually think it's really easy. It's not a hard trail. I've done it at a bone stock Sahara all the way up to the rigs that I build on 37s and, big horsepower. But when you're going up Moab Rim, if you look across the Colorado River and up, you'll see there's a couple arches. There's one arch that's forming, and then there's another one that is clearly visible from Moab Rim. But yeah, there's a lot of arches that are not in Arches National Park. There's another one forming on 7 Mile Rim that's almost formed. There's one south of town. There's multiple arches throughout Moab, but I look more for the things, like not really the natural things, but the unnatural things. I love finding all of the different dinosaur footprints in Moab because there's like 5 different trails, and then there's some hiking trails you can find them, and the Indian petroglyphs and things like that. In fact, a lot of people don't know right outside of Moab, so north of Moab, right off the highway, are the oldest petroglyphs in the world. So they're called the Ancient Ones. If you've ever watched any of the alien conspiracy TV shows, they always show them in the background. And they're, these beautiful hand-drawn, like red aliens and people from, I forget the exact dating, but 10 to 20,000 years ago, those were drawn on the wall. And that's a 10-minute drive from Moab.
That's what a lot of people don't realize, that there's a heck of a lot more to do in Moab than just go jeeping.
Yeah, Moab is actually in the center of the Dinosaur Diamond.
Dinosaur Diamond, that's right. But you also have your other activities like kayaking and river running, bicycles. I mean, they're on the trails in forests. And of course, side by side. So you got to be watching. You got to actually share the trail with a whole bunch of other user groups, including hikers, of course.
Yep. And I've learned, with all my trips to Moab, most of my knowledge of Moab has been learned from Nina Barlow and Dan Mick and some of the tour guides that live in town, because they learn all this stuff and then they share it with you when you're on an actual guided tour. So it's well worth booking a tour with, one of the well-known tour guides like Dan Mick or Nina Barlow or any of the other ones, because you'll pick up all that additional knowledge that makes Moab so much more unique than just an off-roading place.
Well, that's one thing about Dan Mick. For those that don't know who he is, he's probably, I don't want to say the oldest guide in Moab, but he's one.
That's Dan right behind me.
Okay, if you're watching our video, you can see behind Tracy is Dan in his Jeep, and he even has one of his old tour Jeeps, half of it, inside the brewery. And the brewery, of course, is a local Moab icon. But
he's got one of his tour Jeeps here in Michigan with me that we've done a video on our YouTube.
Right. Yeah, you're redoing one of his. So, yeah, he's definitely a local character, to say the least. He's had a big influence on the club and the town and everything else.
Yeah.
Right,
so, Rick, what's your favorite trail in Moab?
Favorite trail in Moab. I had to pick one. It would be between.
Okay, you can have two. You're the host.
Pritchett Canyon and Hell's Revenge. So Pritchett Canyon is, I believe, an all-day affair. It's got some killer four-wheeling. Propensity to roll is definitely there if you're not careful. It's got
body damage guaranteed almost.
Body damage, well, almost guaranteed. If you don't know what you're doing, you betcha. Goes along a beautiful creek. The scenery's fantastic. A few tough spots that people who know how to spot you can make them look easy, and you can walk right up. Can a stock vehicle do it? Absolutely. Should it? Not if you don't know how to drive. Again, beautiful views. It's got one real difficult obstacle at the end, but there's ways around it. Of course, winches always work. If you want something shorter that also packs everything about Moab into your trip, I do have to say Hell's Revenge. It's solid slick rock the whole way. It has hot tubs you can drive in and out of. It has straight up ascents where you're just hoping everything works well, and then same way going down. Of course, it's all slick rock, which isn't slick. It's sandstone, so you have great grip if you have rubber tires. You have very poor grip if you have steel wagon wheels, which is how the name slick rock came about. Because obviously when you're traversing all that hard sandstone with steel wheels, there's no traction. You're just hoping your horse is going to pull you up and over. Moab Rim, one of the things about Hell's Revenge is it also has really difficult places like the escalator and tip over challenge at the end, whereas the most of it can be done in a fairly stock vehicle. So you have both sides of it. And talking about Greg's favorite, one of my least favorite is Moab Rim. And I'll tell you why. Now, I've been up and down it in 20s of different vehicles. I took the first stock Rubicons up there. It's a beautiful trail. Pucker factor the first 500 yards, absolutely. Once you get past that, and I think Stu even was talking about the right-hand turn, the little crack that picks you right up. You get past that, and the sand dunes in the back, the petroglyphs, that's all incredible stuff. Biggest problem with Moab Rim is it is on a rim, and the trail is right next to it. If you do have a problem, like something breaks, or your brakes go out, or your steering, or you're not paying attention, like some people have, you can roll. And if you roll, that's not really a big problem, as long as you stop. But because you're so close to the edge, you can go over. And that's really not what's going to kill you, because on the way down, you'll hit the power lines, which are below, and you'll get electrocuted. And if that doesn't kill you, you'll hit the road. And if that doesn't kill you, the cement truck coming along on that haul road will punch you into the river, and you'll drown. So
and if that doesn't kill you, you're drowned in the river.
Absolutely. So I don't want to drown. All right. The other stuff is okay.
Oh, you want to be electrocuted and smacked by a haul truck and okay.
I can live through that, but drowning? No. I mean, by then, you're a goner.
Rick, it's all psychological. You have to just put that out of your mind.
I mean, for me, the minute I knew I was going over the edge, I'd have a heart attack and be dead before I hit the power line. So,
well, the funny part is because I've done that trail so many times, and the couple places where people roll. Because during Easter Jeep Safari, I don't think I've ever been at an Easter Jeep Safari where at least one person didn't roll every day on Moab Rim. Usually they roll from just bad spotters or bad placement, or they're not paying attention.
Yeah. And usually it's just a flop, not a real roll.
Right. But at any of those places where people do roll, you would have to roll like 15 or 20 times before you made it to the edge.
Right. As you gain speed.
Yeah.
They probably clear the power lines.
Little snowball of death.
No, I didn't put that into the equation, okay? If you roll enough times, you'll be flung straight into the river and drown.
Yeah.
Because it's only, 500 feet?
Well,
Depends.
So it goes from 0, because you start at the road, up to, I think that near the top, you're close to 800 feet.
Yeah. So
and then it goes up from there. But when you're on the actual ledge, you're close.
About 500. That's enough.
I love taking new people who haven't been to Moab yet, and I take them up Moab Rim at night. So I make them do it at night with their headlights on, because all you can see is what your headlights are lighting up. You can't see the fall to your doom. Mm-hmm. All you see is what's in front of you. And then the next day you take them up it again in broad daylight, and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe I did this.
Yeah, exactly.
So since we're talking about Moab and lots of cool stuff to do around Moab, I know we all have a favorite place to eat in Moab.
Well, tell me.
The Moab Diner.
Okay, Moab Diner is an icon. It is right in the center of town.
And it's standard American cuisine that's simple. It's the best breakfast. That's why I go there, just for the breakfast.
Yep, and they'll cook you an undercooked egg.
Oh, they will.
Oh, yeah. Yep. If that's how you want it, by darn you, it's what you're going to get. It's America.
Yeah. And ice cream. Best place for ice cream in town.
I agree.
Yeah, the diner is definitely a must-do while you're in town.
Which is usually why it's packed.
Yeah, but it's kind of like the gathering point in the morning. If we don't have something hard on the schedule, you just kind of show up, and you'll run into people you know. It's like the Cheers bar, Moab.
Well, and years ago, it's not so much now because Moab's getting so populated, but years ago, I mean, even 10 years ago, in the middle of winter, if you went to Moab, the diner was one of the only restaurants that stayed open year round.
Right, because it wasn't strictly a touristy place.
Right.
Tracy, what's your favorite?
I have 2.
Well, you're a co-host. You get 2 things.
Milt's for a burger.
Good burgers.
It's been there for forever and ever and ever. And my new favorite in the past, 5 or 6 years, is the Quesadilla Mobile that is right off of Main Street, and I think it's 1 South, or is it on Center?
It's the food truck.
Yeah, it's a little food truck, and they have the best quesadillas. I kid you not, they're over an inch thick, and you eat 2 slices. You have 2 slices to wrap in foil and throw on the engine for the trail the next day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
there's a little Mexican restaurant in town too that's it's like a fast food Mexican. I can't remember the name of it, but it's absolutely phenomenal and so cheap, and the portions are massive. But I don't remember the name of it. I go there every time I'm in Moab.
Liam, did you go with him?
Well, the place he's talking about, if I remember correct, they're also one of the few places open later at night for cheap. And that's why I've been there so many times, is because I'll get back and it's like, well, shoot, it's 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. We haven't had supper yet. And so then we'd go there. But I would say for me, and it's only because of a beer, is the Spoke, because they have an apricot Hefeweizen and it's really good. So I always stop there.
That's going out on a limb there for an apricot Hefeweizen.
Apricot Hefeweizen?
It's very good.
How skinny are your jeans, young man?
What?
Nothing, sorry.
Yeah, but
Hey, you know,
the restaurant, so
I gotta
how about the brewery?
one thing. They do make a really good burger at the Spoke, and so when Milt's is, when the line is like 40 deep and you don't want to spend an hour and a half waiting, the Spoke has a really great cheeseburger. So, but I'm not touching those fruity frou drinks, Liam.
It's not a fruity drink. It's a German beer.
But apricots are fruit.
Okay, yes.
Right, with
So
apricot flavor.
I have a non-Jeep question, Liam.
Okay.
Do you wear dress-style loafers with no socks?
Absolutely not.
Then I wonder how... We'll dive deeper into the wheres and the whys of Liam.
I wear them with socks.
All right. Who wears sandals?
Oh,
Just me?
I wear them.
Sometimes.
I know.
When it's winter here in Michigan, I have to put boots on, but you'll notice in summer or anywhere else, usually if I'm not in a really weird footwear, like 5-finger shoes or something, I'm in flip-flops.
But you also wear a kilt.
Yeah, but that's not weird.
What's wrong with wearing
heritage.
a kilt?
In winter?
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you ever seen a true traditional kilt? They're made of 8 yards of wool.
Mm-hmm.
I don't wear them in the winter because I would sweat. In the summer, they're great because
I don't want to know.
Chafing. No. There's no chafing goes away. There's they're very comfortable.
Chris,
there's stuff to be said for air.
Yes.
Tyler, where's your...
Oh, what's that little barbecue place? Oh, it's like the pig or the
Blue Pig.
The Blue Pig. They're burnt tips. Burnt tips at the Blue Pig. Holy crap. Your tongue will jump out of your face and slap you. It is so good. It is just, ooh.
Well, there you go.
Not cheap, though.
No. Stu,
Chris
what's your favorite?
Pardon?
What, Rick? Chris,
I thought we were asking Chris what his favorite was.
He said the diner. He jumped in the beginning with the diner. So, Stu, where's your favorite place to eat?
Yeah, for breakfast, the diner. I always will go into the brewery, and they've got good hamburgers. I'm a hamburger guy, so they got a pretty good burger, and but that gets kind of crowded as well. So on an off Easter Jeep Safari week, if I'm cruising through town, it'll be the diner or the brewery. And then I used to like Bucks. Bucks was good too.
Stu?
And of course the Hacienda Mexican food.
Yeah, the Hacienda is.
But I only get one.
Right.
Stu, go ahead. Sorry.
No problem. Yeah, honestly, one of the things, one of the other aspects of Moab that make it such a great place is that there's a lot of really good food.
Yeah, there is.
It's kind of hard to believe because if you've never been there before, you'd never guess. But to be honest, there's, I like the Moab Brewery because you can get just about anything, and they actually have good beer. And Milt's or the Spoke if I'm going to go for hamburger. But there's this little Chinese place that's right next to the Greenwell Hotel.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it's actually pretty good. So
I never had that.
I end up going there every trip.
You need to try it.
Yeah, it's a good place.
Yeah, and they have a buffet. Well, they did have buffet style as well. So, but who knows now? All right. So my vote is, I think it has to be the Jailhouse. Jailhouse for breakfast.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're
Definitely
Swedish.
Jailhouse.
Their Swedish pancakes with lingonberries are really, really good.
Yeah, it's almost foo-foo.
It is foo-foo.
It's not
almost about it.
For sure. Okay, Moab Diner, that's all American, kill you with a heart attack, perfect food. Jailhouse is a little bit different.
The one place that nobody has touched upon, and for me, it's kind of the best bang for the buck, and that's Zach's Pizza. Their all-you-can-eat pizza buffet is...
Oh, yeah, right on the corner.
Yeah. Zach's good.
Upstairs and downstairs, it's great. And then, of course,
there's usually some really big parties at Zach's during Easter Jeep Safari, but I don't know if they'll have.
We'll see what happens this year.
Yeah.
Then you got Pasta J's across the street. That's always been.
Yep, that's always good.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in Moab, and a lot of things to do besides jeeping. They've got museum, and they've got bowling alley and movie theater. I don't know how those things are going this year, but I think that pretty much wraps up Moab.
Yeah, I think it's one of those places where you have to go at least once in your jeeping career, just like the Rubicon. It's a bucket list sort of thing. Some people will do it every year, again and again and again. Of course, when I was in the business, I had to go every year, again and again and again. And fortunately, I liked it and still do. And I'm looking forward to going out there this year, especially with our Gone-Gpn crew.
Well, a couple of the guys had to bail on us. They had some other stuff going on. So we're left with Tyler and Liam and Chris and Rick and myself. We've got a follow-up question to Toolbox Talk. This comes to us via email from AJ. He says, "Hi, I love the podcast and videos. Thanks for putting them together. On a recent podcast, you touched on something I was curious about and would like to know a little bit more about. You had discussed running a lunchbox locker or spool with manual hubs and running one hub unlocked. I was considering doing just that up front and also in the rear, as I have a full float Dana 44 with lockout hubs in the back too. As I understand it, an open differential will send power to the wheel with the least amount of traction all of the time. If I ran an auto locker or spool with only one hub locked, only one wheel per axle would receive power, but it would be the one that needed it more often than an open diff, right? Am I nuts? Are there downsides that I'm missing? I would love to hear Rick and the crew discuss this a little further. Thanks, AJ."
That's really a multi-part answer because he's not nuts, and it is really common for people to do something similar. The reason is, especially with a spool, you have 100% power going to both axles. If you have it in the front, you will have difficulty turning. So what people do is they unlock one hub for a turn and then lock it back in. So it's a lot of effort for very little gain. My preference would be to run like a lunchbox locker or a regular automatic locker because the idea is when it isn't being powered, it will unlock on one side or the other. That's the whole idea behind it. It will unlock if you get off the power. You may have to jiggle it a little, but that's how it works. Unlike an open differential, which will never lock back up, a locker will. So, Tyler, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, technically what he's saying is possible, but how many times do you want to get in and out of your vehicle on a trail, really? I mean, are you going to get out and unlock a hub every time you have to turn? Do you have, unless you've got hydraulic steering, at least hydraulic assist steering, you're not going to be able to run a trail with a locker up front or a spool up front because you just aren't going to be able to turn. And especially on a real technical trail, sometimes you need the locker to get up here. Now you got to turn really tight. Now you got to get locker to get up here. Oh, now I got to turn really tight this way. Are you really going to put your vehicle in park or emergency brake on, get out, unlock a hub, turn 5 feet, get back in? It's just impractical.
Your co-driver out there.
Yeah.
I
guess if you have a trunk
love that, right?
Yeah, you need a trunk monkey to be unlocking and locking your hubs all the time. So technically, would it work? Yeah, I think you would find it pretty much inoperable on the trail. You just wouldn't be able to get out and lock in and lock out enough to, I think you'd get real sick of it real fast.
Plus, let's say you get into a situation where the locked hub is now the one off the ground. So the power is going to that wheel in the sky spinning, and it's not going to the unlocked hub, which is on the ground. And if it was locked, you'd go forward. So I would say let's just not. Plus, you're doubling the stress on your axle shafts and components. Instead of dividing it equal to 2 tires, axles, you're concentrating it on one.
How many broken axle shafts before you pay for a decent locker?
Yeah, and that's really a good point. Is if you have a selectable locker, air locker, aux locker, zip locker, whatever your choice is, then you wouldn't have to deal with that. You just flip a switch and done deal.
Yeah, you remember back in the day, right? People were doing that. They'd come in like, I'm locked up in the front, and they'd basically be running a Detroit locker. And, I witnessed that a number of times. I'm like, what a pain in the rear. Because basically you're right. You can't steer. Tyler, you mentioned adding hydraulic steering. It's like, but man, then you're putting all of that extra load on all of your steering components. Something's going to give.
And I have done it.
Or break ball joints.
You did it, Rick.
No, I've built plenty of vehicles with Detroit's front and rear. And, you power through it. It's not easy, but you can do it. You can steer, but that's where the selectable locker has such a great advantage, which is why it's generally my choice.
Well, AJ, I hope that answered your question or gave you a little more insight. And now we're going to go back to Moab and Jeep's presence at Easter Jeep Safari. And most people have driven down 191 if you've been to Moab, and you've come past this large gathering at Walker Drug, and there's a great display there with some really unique Jeeps that you can't find on the dealership. And Rick and Chris have a lot more insight to Jeep's presence at Easter Jeep Safari and Jeep concepts.
Yeah, that's right. It's really cool that Jeep, corporate Jeep, of course, is involved in not necessarily the actual Easter Jeep Safari, but they have their presence there, most notably exactly what you said. Walker Drug on Wednesday, they show off what the engineers and design studio has come up with as far as a concept car. Now, most of these concept vehicles, Jeeps, are driving normal vehicles. And the head of Jeep design, Mark Allen, is one of the leading force behind it. And he's been doing this for many years. And he's an actual Jeeper. He gets it, obviously. And Chris, what was it, 2002 they started coming out with the concepts and you started photographing them?
2008.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So usually Mopar would put together 3 or 4 vehicles. Jeep would put together 3 or 4 vehicles. Mopar's rigs were often, they were more tame, a selection of Jeep performance parts and kind of a display case for their new products for the year. But the Jeep guys would go into their crazy cave and probably have a couple cocktails and say, what kind of crazy thing can we come up with this year? And it would be everything from futuristic to super retro. And it's been a great program. Tracy mentioned Walker Drugs, so they'll have their new vehicles out every year, but they also bring out some of the classics, some of the favorites from the past. And I know you guys have been at EJS for a long time. What are some of your favorite concepts from the years?
Oh man, I would have to say, and it's a more recent favorite, but it's a retro, and that would be Road Trip.
Mm-hmm.
It takes me back to some really fun memories of vehicles I've had, vehicles I spent a lot of time in the mountains of Colorado, and it just, I don't know, it resonates with me. Road Trip is a Wagoneer. It was set up so perfectly, right down to the stuffed German Shepherd in it.
In the back seat.
Yeah, and we were lucky enough to have it greet us at our final, or one of our final JP Dirt and Drives, and it was cool to pull into the parking lot and have that sitting there and being able to literally crawl around it without the hordes of people at Walker Drugs, and it was just beautiful. I mean, from the greenish colored paint to the interior, I mean, I just loved it.
Yeah, it was an awesome build, and basically all it was about a '66 Jeep Wagoneer that they put on top of a JK chassis, and modified, of course, and a big Hemi engine and all the standard upgrades. But like you said, the interior with the plaid and the stickers, Road Trip stickers from Idaho National Park, just like if you had gone with your parents, and then had wicker basket on the roof and
the toolboxes in the back and the old cooler, right?
Yeah. So they took a lot of time, and I agree, Tracy. Road Trip was definitely one of my favorites, and I've had lucky enough to have an opportunity to drive it, and of course it drives just like a new vehicle because that's how Jeep Sign Office makes these vehicles. They're set.
Yeah, that was a good one. Love that.
I'd take that one any day. How about you, Tyler?
Hands down, it'd be the 2016 Jeep Comanche concept. I don't know why manufacturers are moving away from the single cab mini truck market. They've just abandoned it. Mm-hmm. And to see that, I mean, that truck, it was a diesel, it was a single cab, it was a smaller platform, mini truck kind of platform, convertible top, which is pretty sick, I think, but I'd like it either way. The military style bed, but all the boxes, single cab, pickup truck, diesel engine. Love that concept. Love it. I wish they'd still bring it back. They've got the Gladiator, and I liked the single cab concept of the Gladiator they did 2 years ago. But they could still revive the Comanche label. And if they did, that was such a sick little truck. Man, that truck was cool.
Yeah, the nice colors on it. Tan, blended right in with the Moab sandstone.
Oh, perfect color. And I don't know if you remember back, I think in the early, I want to say late 80s, early 90s, Dodge did a convertible Dakota pickup.
Oh, yeah.
I actually had a roommate in college that had one of those. And that was a cool truck, man. A convertible pickup truck's really a lot cooler than you'd think.
Yeah, actually, a friend of mine had a Datsun back in the 70s convertible, but that's because someone chopped off the top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that Comanche concept. We were still chomping at the bit to get a pickup truck from Jeep. And I wish they would. I wish they'd come back into that market. Since everybody else has pretty much abandoned it, I think they would absolutely destroy and just crush that market if they brought a little single cab compact pickup back to market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. No one plays in that market.
No.
Even
the Tacomas are great big now. Everything's just huge.
Yeah.
You can't find small mini. There's just no mini trucks.
There is no such thing as a mini truck anymore.
So, Liam, did you have a favorite concept at the one EJS that you went to?
Oh, well, so I've got two favorites then if I'm talking about the one I went to. Well, I wasn't thinking about the one I went to. There was a lot of good concepts that year because they had the two-door Gladiator, which was just so perfect. And it hurts a little bit because it's not a production vehicle and it was just too perfect.
But you're right, it was perfect.
Yeah, the M715 with just completely done up with the Hellcat and all that. That was amazing. But one of my favorites from back when I was dreaming of Easter Jeep Safari and only seeing the concepts online is the one called Jeepster, which was that a JK or a JL? Those of you that know.
JK.
Let's see. That would have been a JK.
It would have been a JK, yeah. And it's red. And I don't know if you can tell if you're watching the video, I do like red Jeeps. And although my Jeep is red and black, I've always liked the red and white look. And the Jeepster concept, I thought was just perfect. I think they chopped the top a little bit and gave it the red style lines. And, oh, man, when I saw that, I said, if I had enough time and money to paint and do my Jeep the way I want it, it'd look just like that. So
that was a really fun rig. That was a fun rig to drive. We had it out at the sand dunes. I don't know if you remember that, Rick, but
oh yeah,
yeah,
it hauled.
Yeah, fun for carbon turns.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of people don't understand. As media, we were invited to come out and drive the vehicles and inspect them and crawl underneath, and take photos, and that was all on a Monday. So the rest of the people got to see them in live on Wednesday at Walker Drug. So, doing this a few years, we've had a lot of cool opportunities. And I was thinking about my favorite and going, JK8, FC, New Kaiser. It's difficult. What about you, Chris?
Dang. I don't know. New Kaiser was definitely there, but like the 5-quarter 715 that they did 2019, that was a super fun drive. I mean, we'll go out on Friday, and Saturday, the week before Moab, sometimes even Thursday. And so we shoot all these. So we spend, a couple of days photographing them. So I usually see them from behind the lens, and then I see them as a media guy on Monday. I don't know. I've been in the rock crawling scene for a long time. So, the hardcore go fast cars are fun. They had the Immortal and then the Hellcat or Trailcat, right? Mm-hmm. So that had a 700 horsepower crate Hellcat motor in it. And that was fun. But then they with the craze of overlanding, which, you go back in the history of Jeep and Patty and Lauren Upton and Mark Smith, and I mean, like the ends of the earth overlanding trips that they did. And so they've come out with like Africa, and then recently they came out with Far Out, which was the Gladiator with a rooftop tent and a bar in the back.
So the bar was cool.
So kind of like with the trails, I can't pick just one.
I know, and I can't pick road trip. Tracy already snagged that one, and rightfully so. So I might have to. I'm gonna have to say the Mighty FC. FC is
Mighty FC.
It's just so cool. I mean, when you take a design that's just so weird to begin with, and then bring it up to normal, everyday standards that we have today with components and the bodywork and everything else. It was definitely one of my favorites. And it drove really nice. Of course, with an FC, the weird thing is you're right over the front wheels. So when you're going down a hill, you're looking at the bottom of the hill. Yeah, there it is. And the original FCs had a big heavy metal weight in the back to keep them from tipping over forward. So
I did not know that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Weight and balance on those were a little bit odd. But
yeah, well, that was definitely a cool rig.
Now, Rick, to your point about the FC, there was something going around on Instagram, and I don't know if I can't remember if it was actually a picture of the Mighty FC or it was a rendering of one that someone did with, like a Chevy truck or something like that, or whatever, right? Where they took the cab and squished it and put it right over the front axle.
Yeah.
And someone commented on there and said that, oh, this is impossible. Like, clearly the artist doesn't know what they're doing because of where engines go and how they fit. This is not possible. You'll never see this on the road. And I wanted to just get on there and be like, take apart an FC. And then it's weird. They're so weird.
Oh, yeah. But that was just a keyboard warrior that had no clue that the design goes back to the 50s.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the engine's like behind you.
Right there.
So, Rick, what did you think about some of the kind of military styling cars that they came out with, like the staff car?
Staff car was cool. I mean, I have a soft spot in my heart for anything olive drab, desert sand, and the wonderful canvas with that wonderful canvas smell. I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. And when you have non-directional tread tires, and the way that Mark and his crew build up all those military-esque vehicles with all the little touches like lifting hooks and blackout lights and everything else. Those are a lot of fun. There it is, the design operation.
And the NDT tires.
Yeah, NDT tires. That screams military like nothing else. Simple as that. Yeah, and like any of the concepts, you look really close and you'll find not just what we call Easter eggs, but certain things that you go, why is that? Like on the staff car, on the hood, it looks like Wrangler, but you really got to read what the hood says to figure it out. They got a lot of interesting things. Then, of course, there's another one I like is the JK8. Remember that one? That's where they had pretty much it was a JK pickup. And what these guys do is use a lot of the information garnered from these builds for future vehicles that may or may not appear. Hence why we have a 392 in a JL.
Yeah, and actually I want to add to that real quick. Last week we talked about the half doors quite a bit, and there was something that I didn't get a chance to touch on, which, if you remember, in some of the earlier Easter Jeep Safari builds, they had some Jeeps with half doors with holes in them. And there was a lot of people who loved it. They thought it was really cool. Yeah. And then when Jeep came out with the JL Wrangler in 2018, what did we have on the half doors? We had holes. And I saw a press release, and I've seen other things, so they're not just lying through their teeth, but I saw a press release where at least one spokesperson from Jeep was asked about the holes in the half door. And they said, oh, no, that was concept only. We never intended on doing that. And that is, and I can say this with confidence, it's not true. They tried so hard to put the holes in the door. And really what it comes down to is, just like half doors have an upper portion that you would put on when it's colder or in the rain, they had a plug for the hole that would go in the hole in the half door. And by the time that the plug and the interior and exterior and the upper were all designed, it was so ridiculously expensive. And the doors were actually heavier than the full doors, is what I was told. So, exactly. and they were meeting crash test regulations. By the time all of those things came together, they looked at the hole and said, there's no way we can sell these. They're going to be too expensive, and it's just not feasible. And so that's where the hole went. I have CAD files showing that it was supposed to be in there, and they tried. They really did. They gave it their best effort, but reality kind of struck, and no hole in the half door.
Well, I'm just happy that we have half doors available for the JLs now anyway. Those
yeah.
We already put that on our site and the pricing and everything else. So good things come out of these concept vehicles. And I can think way, way back before the JK was introduced and thinking on one of these concepts, if I remember correctly, all of the design body cues came through. So, yeah, the Jeep engineers know what they're doing, and they're trying. Looks like we lost Chris.
Yeah, Chris had a massive computer malfunction, so he's trying to reboot and come back. But I'm excited to see the concepts that bits and pieces were leaked for last year, and when EJS didn't happen, we know they have those in reserve, and maybe they've been working on something for this year. So I'm excited to see what will be out and about.
Oh yeah, it's going to be a lot of cool stuff.
Absolutely.
The pent-up demand just for us wanting to see, much less the regular public.
Yeah, and the 392 went from concept earlier this year when you and Chris were out in California, or I should say earlier last year. All the days blend together, to being available this quarter for a premium price tag.
Not cheap.
No, I think base price is something like $73,500 plus destination charges, and up from there for all your goodies, gadgets, gizmos, and doodads.
Yeah, it seems kind of crazy, but then you look at what it would cost to drop a Hemi into a regular JL Rubicon. And this is a factory package with a whole bunch of other design criteria thrown in, not just somebody swapping in a different engine. So, yeah, it's out of my price range. I don't know about you guys, but.
And I guess the bonus would be if you were going to take your JL or your JK and drop a Hemi in it, you've got to come up with that money. This, you've got your Hemi and you can finance it into your purchase price.
Oh, good point. Absolutely. And a factory warranty.
True. Very true.
So, yeah, if I was going to go that way, yeah. I mean, I've always said stock is hot because it's engineered to be correct, shall we say. So I know that the design engineers over there that did the 392 know what they're doing, and they've thought about all the little stuff. Does that mean there's no room for improvement? Good Lord, no. That's what Jeeps are all about. I mean,
there's always room for improvement.
Absolutely. Liam's working on his right now because it was perfect when it was built, right, Liam?
Oh, yeah. The 4-cylinder YJ was perfect and powerful, and everyone loved them.
Yeah.
Liar! I know that's not true from personal experience.
So I am going to have to get going because I need to make it to Moab. And I guess I'll do my little plug here. If you see me in Moab and I'm still in one piece, I'll be toting around a Jeep that has parts that go with this thingy on the 4-cylinder. So if you know what this is, you might know what I'm doing. If you don't, you'll have to tune in and find out.
Yeah, and if anybody happens to see him on the road between Michigan and Moab in a ball of flames, or there's a charred piece of
the road
sitting on the side of the road.
Now the side of the engine on the roadside.
At least stop and give them some food, okay?
Yeah. I'd appreciate that.
And do you happen to have a bumper sticker that says "honk if parts fall off"?
I can get one. I'll get one.
You should probably get one.
That would be a good idea.
Much easier to go back 10 miles than 1,100 miles and pick up parts.
So how many miles is it for you, Liam?
Oh, man. I thought it was, well, last time I drove it, I needed an oil change by the time I got home. So I think it's 2,000 one way.
Wow.
That's a long
road trip.
Your Jeep.
Oh, man. It did it last time.
Yeah, fuel prices will come down in a month too. So.
Oh man.
Well, until you get to Moab, and then they're $1 higher a gallon.
Well, that's true too. Yeah.
So one more quick thing, Rick, since you've driven the 392, what were your driving impressions? You can probably talk about that now. You couldn't back then.
Yeah, yes and no. There's a few things that were different on that one that I cannot discuss, but what I can say is it was really cool. I mean, it's a 392. When you have large pistons and 8 of them, instead of 4 with a blower on it, you can feel the difference. You can hear the difference. 4 and a blower is fine. Nothing wrong with that. But my God, give me a V8 any day. I mean,
there's no replacement for displacement.
There is no replacement. And more is better in that area. I mean, you could do a lot of stuff with gears. That's why a little motor and blowers and everything else really can show what a vehicle can do. My God, when you've got the low end grunt with your torque band down low, drop it in gear and just go. Simple as that. You can idle over stuff because you still have all that rotating mass instead of having to wind it up. As far as the suspension, interior, and all the regular stuff, that was really nice. They had to do quite a bit of suspension work for the extra weight, and because of the weight bias front to rear, they had to work on that too. When I got to drive the concept, everything was not sorted out, but that's also why it was a concept at the time. And believe me, we've been hard at work, and what you can drive now is really a feat of engineering.
Okay, well, you have to answer one question for me.
Sure.
Did you power brake it?
I can't get that.
I'm gathering from the grin that we're seeing on the video that there's a better than 50% chance that may or may not have happened.
Yeah. Trust me, if you get a chance to drive it, you will like it. Try it, you'll like it. Simple as that.
Okay.
So what if it costs $75,000? I don't have $50,000, so why would I worry about $75,000?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Well, the whole crew is going to be in Moab during Easter Jeep Safari. We'll trickle in throughout the week. You will be able to find us. I think we're going to run some kind of a contest or two while we're there. May involve social media, so pay attention to our Facebook and Instagram pages for your chance to win some Gone-Gpn swag.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, we want to hear from you guys while you're out there. Look us up. We'll be around. And in the meantime, I guess that's it for this episode.
Yeah, I guess so. So if you guys have questions that you want the team to answer, you can hit us up on Instagram, Facebook, email, carrier pigeon, dog sled, snail mail, you name it. We will get to your questions as quickly as we can. And right or wrong, we'll answer them one way or the other. Absolutely. So until then, thanks again for watching and listening, and make sure you like, share, and subscribe. I'm Tracy Clark for Gone-Gpn. I'm Rick Payway for Gone-Gpn. We'll see you guys on the next episode. Have a great night. On the next episode of the Gone-Gpn Show, we'll have lockers before light bars, where we will answer some of our fans' questions. Willys versus Wrangler. Rick Payway faces off against the new guys, old school versus modern technology. And Trailside, where we will discuss some of our favorite trails and trips we'd like to take. Thanks for joining us on the Gone-Gpn Show. We'll see you at the next episode. We're all Jeep all the time.